And we are back after a long time, Stefan, with APIM Hotrod. How are you?
Yes, indeed. Fine, Massimo. And you? Happy to see you.
Yeah, likewise. It was a very long time. It's the first episode after our 10-year celebration of API management in September with the Microsoft team. Yeah, it was a hectic period at my side, also at yours,
Yeah,
Stefan.
indeed,
So
indeed.
yeah,
Yeah.
it took a
September.
while to
Yeah.
get back, but we are back.
We are back. We're back, indeed, indeed. So,
Okay,
yeah.
what about today?
Well, I think today we're gonna talk about, how to ensure that you have a proper setup of your APIM, right? By reviewing some checklist and let's say, how can you ensure that what you do with APIM is actually that you did everything that you had, that you are supposed to do, basically,
Yeah.
right?
Best practices are enforced, and also services, every cloud service or every solution in general evolve over time. How can we make sure that we are always secure, that we are that everything runs fast? So actually, that was a question coming from one of our subscribers. So we are very happy
Massimo,
to take this up.
I lost you.
Okay.
Yeah, okay, you were freezing. I don't know if it's only on my side. I hope not. Maybe you can repeat your last sentence in case
Yeah.
it's really it was really a
Yeah.
freeze.
So yes. So I was saying that this is one of the questions that one of the our subscriber of our channel brought to us. So how can we do this
Yep.
review? What are we doing? What is our experience in this? So let's get started with this episode, right?
Yeah, good. Yeah, indeed.
Okay, I bring here the way my approach, and let's discuss if it makes sense. What do you think, etc., etc. So, in my personal opinion, is I mean, every company, let's say, that perform assessment on API management, they have their own checklist. I advise to start with this Azure official review checklist that you can find at this GitHub repository. It's extremely easy. There are a lot of controls that you can find here in form of JSON in this folder. But in order to make it very easy to use, you can go on spreadsheet here and download this XSLM module that it will look like this. I just downloaded on my PC. Let's have a look.
Yeah.
You get this Excel, very easy. There are a different, if you go here, there is a little bit hidden drop down, and you see this Excel is used to put together different checklists. One of those checklists is here API management. I'm gonna select it, and I can import all the controls into this file. Okay, here we are. So 44 controls are loaded. There are it's very well organized. There are different design areas. There are here the controls to be checked, some severity, and you can keep track if it's verified, not verified, and add your comments. Of course, every solution is different. Something that is marked as, for example, medium might not be relevant for your solution, and so on. And also you have here on the right more information if you want to go deep into it. So that's my starting point. The advice starting point, of course, with focus first with what is marked as high, and all the way through the different severity. This is also a very good thing to document if you want your solution. So before going into maybe check some of these controls, Stefan, I would like to mention another option to approach this review. It might be to use the well-architected framework. Here you can find some checklists that are grouped for, following the WAF. So reliability, cost optimization, and operational excellence. But most of them, or I believe 90, 99, 95 of these controls, you also have it here in this review checklist. I found this very handy and easy to use, right? What's your opinion so far?
No, indeed. I think the Excel format makes it easy as well, indeed, to filter, sort, and so on, right? And just focus on what is of interest. And indeed, it's also something that you can put in the hands of everybody, right? So, like security analyst, for instance, and then maybe pre-filter on what is more, specific to security. So I think it's pretty handy and yeah a good way to report this. And of course, most of these controls can also be let's say ensured by Azure Policy, right? Which is a way also to see let's say to have continuous assessment of the actual implementation, right?
Yes.
So we can combine both. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very great point. Like the using policy to enforce that desired state.
Yeah, indeed,
It's a great one.
indeed.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
yeah. Oh, go ahead, Marcel.
yeah, what do you think if we dig into a little bit into the controls? Maybe yeah, let's filter on high and see what's there. What do you think?
Yeah, good idea. Yeah. I think anyway, everybody would start with the high, right? To at
Yeah,
least try to have a check mark next to each high control. But
yeah.
as you said, I think it's also important to see, okay, this is baseline, and maybe indeed in some context, some industries, maybe a medium for Microsoft could become a high in your industry, right? If you're,
Mm.
for instance, security driven, or so indeed you have to review, of course, these severity levels and make sure that they are suitable for your industry. But yeah, so I think most of them are also just how could I say common sense, right? If you see, for instance, use the latest TLS version. Oh yeah, I was already further. Sorry. Or enable diagnostic settings, right? Let's start with the first one.
That's
Yeah,
very
of
normal,
course.
right?
That's very normal. So, but indeed, it's not enabled by default. So if you don't do it, then it will not happen by magic. So, but of course, it's common sense. But indeed, it's always worth to check. Also, I would say make sure to always look at what you do with the diagnostic logs. Maybe that's something not only for APIM but for every Azure resource, because log ingestion costs money in Azure, right? And so sometimes I also see as a default baseline that we, for any service, we take all the log categories and we send them all right to log analytics, for instance. But all of that is a hell lot of logs which you have to pay for. So I think it's also always interesting to have a look at what do you really plan to do with those logs. For instance, in APIM, you have the gateway logs, you have different types of logs, and maybe see that you could also, I think it's acceptable to discard some sort of logs if you know that you will never do anything with those logs, right? So it really depends a bit, knowing that the logs allow you to investigate, to set up more advanced alerts, but you will always have metrics anyway in Azure Monitor. Right? That's something to know, that even if you don't ingest those logs, metrics alerts are there always in Azure Monitor, so you can always set up alerts. But that's going to be more basic alerts then.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was already a long,
No.
a
But
long
it's
talk from
like
my side.
this
Yeah,
is a classic log analytics. Sorry, diagnostic settings is also something that is also, most of it. A lot of time is also done via policies, and one of the things that I saw it happen sometimes that done via policy and then also done via infrastructure as code. You have two times a
yeah,
diagnostic setting
yeah, because indeed you can
configured.
add multiple settings. Yeah, indeed.
So
That,
you have duplication of logs and then
yeah,
duplication of costs and so on. But okay, that's a little
yeah,
bit of um, yeah, off topic.
yeah.
Yeah, then here there are like, okay, configure alerts for the most critical metrics, but also I would say most critical services or most critical flows. That
Yeah,
is in general a good practice.
indeed.
It,
Yeah, a certificate stored in Azure Key Vault. Yeah, so historically, indeed, you could upload. But you can still actually upload the certificates within the APIM instance. And here, okay, just make sure you try to put that in Key Vault and let APIM pull the certificates out of Key Vault. Right, that's these kind of more security. You see, it's in the security pillar.
yeah,
So that's indeed interesting to see it. This one. Incoming request to APIs, data optimization. Yeah, so just make sure that of course your APIs are protected. That's basically what it means. It doesn't mean that you must absolutely use Entra ID. Azure AD, Entra ID are the same, of course, but you need to make sure that you need some sort of authorization mechanism right in place
yeah.
beyond just
And
subscription keys. Yeah.
And it's something that I think in a couple of episodes we already iterate enough on how much important is to secure your APIs.
Indeed. No, for
Then
sure.
this one, Stefan, backup, it's something that, what do you think, most of the time is forgotten?
Yeah, indeed. Well, actually, most customers don't even think of taking a backup of APIM because it's more perceived as a compute service, right? So then, of course, why would you back up a compute service? But actually, APIM is more than this because remember, it's API management. So it's not only about a gateway that you have, it's also about plenty of, let's say, configuration data. So you might say, yeah, but anyway, you do everything through CI/CD. So why would you need to back up, right? But the thing, one reason, for instance, is if you use subscriptions, right? And unless you would create the subscriptions yourself, because that's also possible through CI/CD. But if you let APIM generate subscription IDs, for instance, they will not come from your CI/CD, right? You don't have those IDs, and you will start to distribute subscription keys. And then if you have an issue with your APIM, then of course you cannot just reprovision because subscription IDs would be different. So this is part of APIM state. So that's one reason, for instance, where using APIM, of course, backupping APIM is something important. And of course, it also depends. Some customers, I think less and less, but you can still see this in small enterprises that, for instance, only use still the Azure portal, right? I know some customers like that they don't even use CI/CD. So if you start doing stuff with the portal, then all the state is in APIM, and you don't have any way to reprovision anything anyway, because you don't have a CI/CD platform. So if you lose your APIM or if you introduce a corruption, then indeed, if you have just a backup, you can just restore it, and then you would be just safer doing this. Yeah.
Then we have here, be aware of limits. So that's, it's very important, especially also when you do the initial setup, right? You are going to size the capacity of your service. Okay, how much instances you need, if you have a limit in terms of APIs, if you have a limit in terms of throughput, and all of these kind of things. Awareness is always extremely important since the day one, right?
Indeed, no, that's for sure. I think that's even in design phase that you always need to consider limits, whatever service you deal with, right? There is a very handy page, the Azure subscription code as limits, right? Where you have all the services listed with code as the limits of each service. And then, of course, you have hard limits, which means that you cannot change this. And you have some limits that can be extended to through a ticket to Microsoft, although it depends also nowadays in which region you are, because I think there are more and more capacity issues in some regions where then even a limit that could be normally extended might not be extended because of regional capacity issues.
Listen, it just came to my mind. Let's try. What's the if you could take one of the limit of API management and make it go away, which one it would be?
I'm just thinking about maybe the number of APIs simply, or operations that you can host on a single instance would be one, which is actually not very, very clearly documented, right? So you see, so you have to pay attention to this. So don't consider that just deploying APIs, even if they are not in use, they still eat some of the capacity, because the gateway will actually pull these configuration in memory, and so you eat part of your memory just by the configuration itself injecting. But yeah, I don't know. What do you have in mind, Massimo? I guess you have something in mind.
It just came. No, it just came to me like this. So limit. I don't have anything in mind.
Okay, I thought you had something.
No. But just like, because it's not really a limit. I would like to, there are some matrix that are not exposed as a matrix, like when it's about SNAT. I would like to see those metrics as a default matrix, but okay, that's not really a limit. It's more a feature request. The classic feature request of having the VNet on integration in the lower things. But
and that is something that applies to all services. So but I see. So but indeed, it's not specific to APIM, but indeed, you're a bit blind if you have port exhaustion. Right.
Those limits are more like the caching limits, the throughput limits, as you said, the number of APIs. Those more let's say resource-based limits that you might have before because of the underlying platform.
No, indeed.
Okay.
In any case, look at all the limits. They are documented most of the times. It's very well documented. Some limits are a bit blurry, like number of APIs and so on. But still, it's a very good practice to always check at limits, whatever service you deal with. So that's for sure. Yes, self-hosted gateway deployments are resilient. So of course, if you would use a self-hosted gateway, right, it's typically in Kubernetes, and then to be resilient, what do you have to do? Well, it's actually quite easy. You have, let's say, your gateway running as a pod inside of Kubernetes. So if you ensure, let's say, 3 replicas, you only pay for 1 gateway, and then you have a highly available cluster, right, spanning the availability zones. Then you might have 1 gateway in each zone. So I would say if you do this, actually it's free. And if it's free, you have to pay for the underlying nodes, of course, but you are not forced to run only the gateway on those nodes, and then you would be resilient, right? So that's one of the things to do to comply with this.
Okay, so and all the rest are I believe.
Disabled public access. That's a good one still. But I think we discussed that in other episodes, but maybe very quickly.
Yeah, go ahead.
So because in any case, so we have 2 flavors in APIM, well, plenty of flavors, but let's say you take the premium tier, it can be VNet integrated, but it can be external facing or really internal only. And so meaning that an inbound VIP, right, will be available. So typically when you take premium, you try to just go with the internal VNet flavor. So meaning that there is no exposure. You will still have a public IP, but that's not an inbound IP, it's an outbound IP. So it's something to know. But in any case, today, I would say in the realm of the hub and spoke or a managed hub and spoke, as I would call that through V1, Virtual One, most of the companies, even small ones, start to try to indeed eliminate as much as possible the public facing endpoints and try to control traffic, right? Internet exposure to very well-known channels. That's basically it. So that's why the best practice here. So you have to pay attention to this, of course.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, today I think that 90% of the things that we do are VNet integrated and with anything publicly exposed. So using VNet injection, using private endpoint, firewall, and whatever techniques, all the techniques are there. But at the end of the day, yes, you want to have this isolation of the services from the exposure to the outside world. So, and here the TLS and the cipher, it's something very...
Of course, always pay attention and take this with a grain of salt, because if you have an existing APIM, just not blindly, update to the latest TLS version, because you might have clients using an older version. So then if you would do that, you would, let's say, put in queue breaking change. So you need to make sure that, of course, your consumers are able to update as well, right? And to talk the latest. But of course, it's a good security practice to do this.
Let me say something on this. So this is in general is a best practice, right? So if you do an assessment and you propose, of course, a change for everything, there is a risk evaluation, right? That needs to be done.
Of course.
And in this case, TLS, changing the TLS version, of course, has a super direct impact on consumers.
And not only the version, the ciphers as well, right? You have cipher suites, and that's often, sometimes you have upgrades of cipher suites, and then of course you have existing clients using another cipher suite, and then you just break communication. So it's important to do this, but just of course measure the impact and make sure that you know what you're doing there.
Okay, cool. This is we were not going through, of course, all the checks. So you can there are 44 or so we saw before. So some of
we could go through the 44, but then it would take half a day, right? To record.
But like now, I'm just let's look one of the law. There is only one law. Let's see what is it. If you need to log a high performance level, I consider okay. Consider Event Hub policy. So this is for if you want to log into Event Hub is one of the extensibility point, right? So the way you can just asynchronously stream out information to a technology that might that is suited to support that kind of traffic. So yes, this is,
and it's also it's indeed for performance reasons, but also cost, right? Because indeed, if you log a lot of stuff to Event Hub, that's gonna cost almost nothing, right? Contrarily, or as opposed to application insights, which in the end is also then behind. Log Analytics is behind, and as we said earlier, Log Analytics costs are quite high, especially at a certain point in time. So Event Hub can be a very, very handy stuff. And also, if you would do business access monitoring, right, that you really try to see really more how your APIs are consumed and so on, then Event Hub, you can also hook a Stream Analytics to Event Hub, right? Take Event Hub as a source, Stream Analytics as the middle tier taking data, and for instance, spitting out this all to Power BI, for instance, real-time dashboards, which could be very sexy as well. So, and that, of course, you could not do with application insights, right? If you have near real-time, let's say, monitoring somehow. Yeah.
But then when you start with Stream Analytics or whatever engine to process the stream of events, then is where you will have also the cost and then,
indeed, Stream Analytics. Yeah, of course. Event Hub is very cost friendly. No, if you just let them in Event Hub and swallow those logs, or maybe it could go to Splunk, for instance, that would take the logs from Event Hub. Then, of course, on the Azure side, the cost would be very minimal because
let's take one more before closing the episode. Let's take one more medium. Just click. I go random, scroll up, down, 1, 2, 3, stop. This one. Let's see. Oh no, auto scaling. We already talked about it. Private endpoint. Allez, one more. This one. Named value.
Wow. But you can.
I take this one. Use backends. Why? Because especially if you have. I love backends, but it's not something that is there since the day one. So if you have an API management implementation done years ago before the introduction of backends, this should be something that could be really relevant for you to evaluate whether to move from your, let's say, hard-coded, I don't want to call it hard-coded, let's say, downstream or upstream endpoint definition to the use of backends that facilitate the reusability, and it's one of the things that we saw in one of the previous episodes.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, named value is a bit the same. I mean, don't think they were there from day one either. Named value, I think it came after, but it's there for quite a while. Yeah. No, I think it's you see maybe one that is interesting, the DR, right? Leverage premium with the app. Maybe just one comment on this one.
Which line?
Just two below where you are.
Okay.
Yeah, you see for the leverage premium tier with deployment scaled across 2 or more regions. Indeed, today that's one. But I often have as a question, why wouldn't I just create 2 separate instances, right? One, for instance, West Europe, one in North Europe. So 2 separate instances instead of, and like 2 standards, say that you basically don't need VNet isolation or limited. Then, of course, 2 standards would still be cheaper than 1 premium, right? Especially if you split the premium across regions, because then you have to pay for 2 gateway units. But actually, one of the reasons is that if you have a shared control plane, then of course the state that we mentioned earlier, and also with the backup and so on, but then it's the same state, right? So both gateways in different locations will actually talk to the same control plane, so the same state. But if you have 2 different instances, then of course each instance has its own state, so its own set of subscriptions and so on. And if the goal is to basically seamlessly redirect a user in active or active passive mode, then of course if they would have different subscription keys, to consume the same API, it's not something you would afford. So it means that you would need to manage that aspect for sure. Right, that's one of the
double management, double troubleshooting, double. Even if you can do a lot, as with infrastructure as
Yep,
code,
code,
at
yeah,
the end of the day, you just you are marrying with the devil.
yeah, indeed. You still have then two states to maintain, and somehow they need to be in sync. Otherwise, you could, be in a situation where North Europe is lacking something compared to West Europe. That's never going to happen with a single instance. Just I saw
Okay.
it, so I said maybe good to talk about this one. Yeah, good. I think
Yeah,
it's a
good.
good. Yep. Yeah, go ahead.
We
Massimo.
are at the end
Yep.
of this episode. Another, I just want to close or to add something with your lovely map, Stefan, because it's also I use it to extend to help me to extend that review checklist. Okay, so which kind of, because this map gives me a high level idea on all the topics that are covered in API management. So if I want to help myself in identify best practice over time, I can use this map to navigate the domain of API management and then bring back those best practices about, for example, scaling, about publishing, developing, and so on into the review checklist.
Yeah, indeed, because the review checklist will mostly focus on the what you should do, while the map is already a first way to see the how, right? How you can do something, right? Of course, you will need to explore further yourself, but indeed, you can combine both. Yeah, that's right, Massimo.
Okay, cool.
Good.
So, and that's bring us to the end of our episode, Stefan. So,
Great.
voila.
So, was a nice one. Thank you, Massimo. And then,
Thank you, Stefan. Thank you, everyone that will watch this episode, and see you next time.
See you next time. Bye.